I am told, don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I have been told that I am the first candidate for president ever to come to Malcom, Iowa. And the mayor told me that there are about 287 people in the town, and I think we got most of them here this afternoon. So thank you very much. And let me tell you, some of you may know, that my state of Vermont, like Iowa, is a very, very rural state. In fact, most of our people live in towns of less than 1,000. And I spent a couple of years in a town just about the size of Malcom, a couple of hundred people. And it was a remarkable experience. And one of the concerns that I have, and I know you have, is that not just in Iowa or in Vermont, but all over this country, rural America is hurting. We're losing family-based agriculture. We're seeing our kids leave the towns that they grow up in because there are no decent jobs. We're seeing downtowns getting boarded up. We're seeing schools closing or consolidated. And this is an issue that we have got to work hard on, because I believe from the bottom of my heart that a small town is a great place to live in. We should not be embarrassed about that. It is something. And I'll tell you, I was, some years ago, I went to New York City, left Vermont, went to New York City just for a visit. And I'm walking down the street and I say hello to people. And they look at me, shocked, like I was assaulting them. That's true. And in Vermont, people are driving, I don't know if it's true in Iowa, you got one car going this way, one car going that way. People stop and they chat for a few minutes. Do you do that here as well? And, you know, it means something to live in a town where everybody knows everybody else. But we're not going to succeed in protecting rural America unless we have decent jobs, unless we protect our family farmers, unless we have good education for our kids, unless we have good health care, unless we have good internet services and cell phone services. And that's an issue we're going to be talking about a whole lot in this campaign. It is not good that 60% of rural counties in this country are depopulating, getting smaller. So we're going to do everything we can, and we look forward to your ideas about how we rebuild rural America and once again make it a prosperous part of the country where people are so proud to live in. Let me just talk a little bit about the campaign that we are waging. My vision for America is very, very different than Donald Trump's. And I want to say, I don't know the politics of this particular area of Iowa, but I do know that Trump won Iowa by a pretty good vote. And what I want to say to the people of Iowa and the people of Malcom is I can't understand, truly, why people did vote for Donald Trump. He talked about creating jobs for everybody. Remember that? He said, if you elect me president, I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to create health care for everybody. That's what he said. He said that he was a different type of Republican, that he was not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid. He said that he was going to bring forth tax reform that would not benefit the wealthy, but would benefit working families and the middle class. And what I simply want to say is that on all of those issues and many others, Trump was not telling the truth. The fact is, he has not brought forth a plan to provide health care to everybody. Quite the contrary. The plan that he supported would have thrown 32 million people off of the health insurance they have. And that is just a terrible thing. I just, you know, we got a dysfunctional healthcare system to begin with. And what happens to people who are thrown off the healthcare that they currently have? People who are struggling with cancer, heart disease, who just need to go to the doctor. Trump said that he would not cut Medicare and Medicaid. All of you should know it. The ranking member of the Budget Committee said a little bit about it. Trump's budget brought forth $1.5 trillion cut to Medicaid over a 10-year period. You know what that means? That means not only taking away health care coverage for kids and for lower income people, it means devastating nursing homes in America. Because if you have a mom or a dad who's dealing with Alzheimer's or is very sick as a nursing home, who do you think is paying that bill out? By and large, it is Medicaid. You make $1.5 trillion cut to that program, it will decimate people's ability to have nursing home care for their loved ones. Trump said he would not cut Medicare. Well, his budget called for an $850 billion cut to Medicare. Trump said his tax proposals would not be benefiting the wealthy. 83% of the tax breaks are going to the top 1%. So he simply did not tell the people the truth. And whatever you may also say about Donald Trump, whether you agree with him, whether you don't agree with him, I think it is not a healthy thing for this country that we have a president who is a pathological liar, who lies all of the time. Now, I have friends who are conservatives. They are not liars. They believe what they believe, and that's called democracy. But when you have a president who every single day says one absurd or dishonest thing after another, that's not really what we need in the highest levels of government. Just give you one example. Some of you may have heard that just the other day, Donald Trump announced that wind turbines cause cancer. Now, so we were a little bit nervous about coming back to Iowa. You got all these wind turbines all over the place. But I mean, that's just where he gets these ideas, God only knows. But and I would hope that people appreciate, whether you are conservative, whether you're progressive, you need somebody with a little bit of integrity and honesty in the White House who tells people the truth. And the other thing that I feel very strongly about Donald Trump, it's not that I just disagree with him on virtually every issue. That's not the real problem here. But I'll tell you what the real problem is, and Nina Turner touched on this, and that is, it is a very tragic day for us to have a president who is trying to win votes by dividing our people up, okay? And we can disagree on healthcare, you can disagree on tax reform, whatever it may be. But the function of the President of the United States, it seems to be an integral part of the job, is to bring our people together. We are one nation. Whether you're black or whether you're white or you're Latino or you're Native American, you're Asian American, whether you're gay or you're straight, you were born in this country, you're an immigrant. That's what a president does. We bring people together, not divide them up. And I will promise you that our campaign and our administration will be doing exactly the opposite of what Trump is doing. He wants to divide us up. We are going to bring our people together. The principles of our government, and I use the word "our" advisedly, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But the principles of our government are going to be based around the time-honored belief in justice. Justice. That means economic justice. That means social justice. That means racial justice. That means environmental justice. What do I mean by economic justice? And I'm going to tell you things that you don't see too often on television or read in the papers. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than almost any major country on earth, and it is worse now than it was since the 1920s, okay? Listen to this. You got 3 wealthy families in America that now own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. It's 160 million people here, 3 families over there. You have the top 1% now owning more wealth than the bottom 92%. At a time when many families in Iowa and Vermont are working 2 or 3 jobs to put food on the table, 49%, almost half of all new income, goes to the top 1%. So what our campaign is about, and what our government will be about, is creating a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. we are going to focus on also is that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, our kids should not be having a lower standard of living than their parents. Think about that. Huge increases in technology, huge increases in productivity, but unless we turn it around, your generation, young lady, will have a lower standard of living than your parents, and we must not allow that to happen. I've got 4 kids, 7 grandchildren. We do not believe in downward mobility. We believe that we're going to bring the people of this country up, not down. But it is not only an unfair economy that we have to address, we also have to deal with a corrupt political system. You know, in my state, we have town meetings just like this. All over the state of Vermont, once a year, people come together just exactly like this. People vote, they argue about how much they want to spend on the roads and education and so forth. And it's called one person, one vote democracy. You got to vote and you got to vote. Where we are right now is you got to vote, but the Koch brothers and other billionaires are able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on an election. I do not believe that billionaires should be able to buy elections in the United States of America. That is why together we're going to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And that's why we're going to move to public funding of elections, because I want all Americans, you're conservative, you're moderate, you're progressive, whatever you may be, I want you to be able to run for office without begging wealthy people for campaign contributions. And when we talk about democracy, there's something else that I feel very strongly about, which is going on right now. And that is that you have cowardly Republican governors who are working overtime to suppress the vote. Now you stop and you think, all right? If you run for office, you run for office, and I've done it many, many times in Vermont, because you believe in something. Here are my ideas, I hope you'll support them. I'm going to try to convince you to vote for me. Somebody else disagrees with me, they'll make their case. But the idea that you have Republican governors all over this country who are so cowardly that they cannot defend their ideas, and that the only way they can win elections is by keeping people from voting who might vote against them. And I say to those cowards, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, if you think you can't win a free and fair election, get out of politics and get a new job. Type of culture. We've got to restore that type of culture. Look, I've run in Vermont, I've lost elections. I've won elections. That's what politics is about. But you run based on your ideas, not gutting the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act and making it difficult for people of color, for poor people, for young people to participate. I want to take a moment to thank the people of Iowa. And I say that because this state is where the political revolution which is sweeping this country began. It began in Iowa in 2015, and I thank you very much. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that when we first came to Iowa in 2015, I dare say that the vast majority of the people have no idea who Bernie Sanders was. We were at 3% in the polls, and maybe most importantly, many of the ideas that we were talking about were labeled by the mainstream media and mainstream politicians as extreme and as radical ideas. You know, 4 years ago, when I was running through Iowa, we talked about raising the minimum wage to a living wage. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And people said, Bernie, yeah, you're a nice guy, but frankly, you're a little bit crazy. I mean, how can you dare, the minimum wage, what is it here, eight bucks an hour, something like that?
$7.25.
$7.25? Wow. How can you talk about doubling what the minimum wage is in Iowa? That's crazy, can't do it. Well, you know what's going on all over the country right now? 6 states have already passed legislation that will raise the minimum wage to 15 bucks an hour. I have talked to too many Iowans who are trying to get by on 8, 9, 10 bucks an hour. And you know what? You can't get by on 8, 9, or 10 bucks an hour. And that is why we are going to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Four years ago, I said that at a time when our infrastructure, that's our roads and our bridges, our wastewater plants, our water system, our rail system, our airports, in many cases are falling about, we can create up to 15 million jobs rebuilding our infrastructure. It is not a radical idea to say that in America, when you turn on the water faucet, you get clean drinking water. Not a radical idea. But people said $1 trillion, my goodness. Well, that is exactly what people today are talking about. 4 years ago, at a time when Republicans are trying to cut Social Security, I always do that. Talk about water. Water gets on my mind, and how these things are. When Republicans, I want you to think about this. In Iowa, in Vermont, and all over this country, you got a whole lot of senior citizens trying to make it on $12,000, $13,000 a year Social Security. You know that? How do you make it on $12,000, $13,000? How do you heat your home? How do you buy the food? How do you buy the medicine you need? And the answer is, you can't do it. Yet despite that, you got Republican leadership in the House and the Senate want to cut Social Security. So we came up with the idea, we said, no, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're not going to preserve Social Security as it is. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. We don't talk about this very much, but there are a lot of seniors in this country who are hurting very badly. You got long waiting lists for Meals on Wheels. These are our parents. These are people who fought in our wars. We have a moral responsibility to make sure that folks who reach the end of their lives can live lives of dignity and security. So we're going to expand Social Security. 4 years ago, I was in a national debate, it was televised, and somebody said, Senator, what do you think the most important national security issue facing our country? And we face many. And I think the questioner thought that I would respond, it's ISIS, it's Al-Qaeda, it's some terrorist group. And I said, no, the most significant and dangerous national security issue we face is climate change. Yep. 4 years ago, that seemed to be a radical idea. Not anymore, because we have the leading scientists in the world now telling us that if we do not move aggressively to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel and move to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, the harm that will be done to this country and this planet is irreparable. Irreparable. So we have a moral responsibility to make sure that the planet we leave our kids and grandchildren is a planet that is healthy and habitable. Now, four years ago, before it was fashionable, we talked about a broken criminal justice system. And we said maybe there's something wrong when in the greatest country on earth we have more people in jail than any other country, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. 4 years ago, we talked about a broken immigration system in which 10 million people are undocumented and living in fear. And the fact is that we need to move toward comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. 4 years ago, we came up with a radical idea, my God, that maybe candidates should run for president and not be dependent on super PACs funded by billionaires. Whoa! That was a very radical idea. And 4 years ago, we said maybe there is something wrong in the Democratic primary when you had one candidate, Secretary Clinton, 4 years ago, getting 500 superdelegate votes before the first ballot was cast here in Iowa. Maybe there's something wrong with that idea. So we brought forth many ideas, a lot more than that. And people say, this is impossible, nobody in America is going to believe that. Well, a funny thing happened in Iowa in 2015 as we went around the state. We started at 3% in the polls, but on caucus night, we ended up with 50% of the vote. And half of the delegates. And that victory in Iowa began the process by which we ended up winning 22 states, getting over 13 million votes, over 1,700 votes at the Democratic National Convention. And most importantly to me, we ended up winning more votes from young people than Clinton and Trump combined. So what Iowa did 4 years ago is he said, you know, health care for all, living wages, protecting the environment, fighting climate change. These aren't radical ideas. These are exactly the ideas that we need to implement in the United States of America. That is the role that Iowa played, and I thank you very much for what you did. So in 2016, with your help, we began the political revolution, and now in 2019, we're going to complete what we began. This evening here in Malcom, I say to the private insurance companies that whether they like it or not, the United States is going to join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a right, not a privilege. The American people are waking up, and they understand that there's something unjust and not acceptable that millions of our people have no health insurance, and even those who do have health insurance, in many cases have such high deductibles and co-payments they can't afford to go to the doctor. How many of you have high deductibles and co-payments? All right. So it's not even a question of whether you have insurance or not. If you don't have any money and you have an insurance program with high deductibles, you do not go to the doctor when you should. And all over this country, people are scared to death that if they end up in the hospital, or their kid ends up in the hospital, their family may go bankrupt from the outrageous bills they're going to receive. So the people of this country are catching on that healthcare is a human right. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, you have the right to go to a doctor when you need to. You have the right to come out of a hospital without worrying about what's going to happen financially to your families. And people also understand that there is something very wrong in our dysfunctional system when we are spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other nation. Do you all know that? You know, it's one thing, you want to buy a cheap car, you buy a cheap car. but you don't expect it to be doing great. We're spending twice as much as any other country, and yet our life expectancy is going down. Our life expectancy is much lower than many other countries. Our healthcare outcomes in terms of infant mortality and many other social indices are worse than other countries. So let me make a very radical proposition to you right now, and that is that I believe the function of a rational healthcare system is to provide healthcare to all people in a cost-effective way, not to make the insurance companies and the drug companies rich. And when we talk about healthcare, we cannot fail to talk about the incredible greed of the pharmaceutical industry. I want you all to know that the pharmaceutical industry charges us the highest prices in the world for the same exact prescription drugs that people are buying all across the planet. Here's the story. Back in 1999, I took a busload of Vermonters up to Montreal, Canada. It was about a 50-mile trip from northern Vermont. And the people on the bus were mostly working-class women who were struggling with breast cancer. Now, we had arranged this whole trip, and we went to a pharmacy in Montreal. Women walked into that pharmacy to get the medicine they needed. One of the drugs was called tamoxifen, which is a widely prescribed breast cancer drug. They paid, this is back in 1999, they paid 1/10 of the price for the same exact medicine they were buying in the United States. And what we see today as a result of that trip, or the members of Congress made that trip, millions of people today are buying medicine from abroad. We should not have to go to Canada or to the UK to buy our medicine. And we're going to tell the pharmaceutical industry that they're going to lower their prices by 50%, which is what the rest of the world is paying. We're tired of being ripped off. When we talk about the future of this country, we talk about education. And when we talk about education, we are talking about children from 0 to 4 who deserve quality childcare. What psychologists will tell you, and what I think we all instinctively understand, the most important years of a human being's life are 0 to 4. That's when we develop intellectually, that's when we develop emotionally. And yet we have throughout this country a child care system which is absolutely dysfunctional. People cannot afford to send their kids to quality child care. It is not a radical idea to say we've got to invest in our children, in our working families, and provide quality child care to every working family in this country. We're going to do that. It is not a radical idea to say that in a highly competitive global economy that we want to have the best educated workforce in the world. Now, 50 or 60 years ago in America, you can get a high school degree, you can go out and get a pretty good job. Well, to a large degree, that world has changed. Technology has changed, the economy has changed. People need higher education if they're going to make it into the middle class. So I believe two things. Number one, we must make public colleges and universities tuition free. And number two, we must reduce the outrageous level of student debt in this country. On Thursday, I had some young people in my office who were going to graduate school. They're in education. And one guy told me, he said, Bernie, I'm getting my master's degree. I'm now teaching school. I will leave school $180,000 in debt. I don't know on a teacher's salary how he is going to ever pay off that debt. Think about it. Think outside of the box. Clearly, as a nation, we want the best educated population possible, right? That's what we want. Why are we punishing young people for the crime of getting that education? Why are we telling them that they're going to have to pay off those debts for 10, 20, 30 years? That is not only wrong, it is insane. It is counterproductive the way you want to run a country. So we're going to substantially lower student debt in this country, and we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Now, people say, my conservative colleagues say, well, hey, Bernie's a nice guy, he's giving away this, giving away that, hey? That's great. Hey, Bernie, how are you going to pay for it? Well, I will tell you how. Donald Trump, in his quote-unquote wisdom, decided to give $1.5 trillion tax break over 10 years to the top 1% and to large private corporations. We are going to rescind the tax break for the rich. Anybody here know how much Amazon, one of the largest corporations in America, very profitable company, owned by the wealthiest guy in America? Anyone know how much they paid in taxes last year?
Zero.
Zero. Well, I think it is time to change that absurd tax system and tell the wealthiest people in this country, who, by the way, are doing better today than they have ever done before, tell large private corporations who are bringing in record-breaking profits that they will start paying their fair share of taxes. Another issue that I want to touch on is something that we all should be embarrassed about, is that in America today, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. You all know that? Okay. And to me, that is not what this country is supposed to be about. We're spending $80 billion a year at the federal, state, and local level locking up fellow Americans. I think that it is long overdue for us to move toward serious and real criminal justice reform so that we are investing in our young people in jobs and education rather than building more jails and having more incarceration. All right? And when we talk about criminal justice reform, we are talking about ending private prisons and detention centers in America. We are talking about ending cash bail. Do you know what I mean by that? I must tell you that a couple of years ago, I didn't know that. Today in America, there are hundreds of thousands of people right now, this moment, in jail. Do you know why they are in jail? You know what their crime is? What was their crime?
Poor.
They're poor. They don't have the money to pay bail. And if you don't have the money to pay bail, you stay in jail. Think about it. Year 2019, we're talking about the equivalent of the debtor prisons that Charles Dickens wrote about 100 years ago. So we're going to eliminate cash bail. And the other very important issue, it's controversial, but I think we're moving in the right direction. Back in 2016, I talked about ending the so-called war on drugs. Remember that? Yeah. And what that is about, I want you all to appreciate that over a period of years, millions of Americans have been arrested for possession of marijuana. And what happens when you get a criminal record? Well, what happens is a little bit harder maybe to get a job. Sit down with an employer, and the employer says, tell me about yourself. You ever been arrested? Well, yeah, I was arrested. I have a criminal record. Well, maybe we'll find somebody else to do the job. So we have people all over the country who are suffering as a result of that. Now, the good news is that we're seeing in state after state movements toward the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana. That's a good thing in my mind. And we're seeing And we're literally seeing some states and communities expunge the records of people who were arrested for possession. So let me conclude my remarks and open it up for your questions and your comments by saying this. This campaign is about bringing the American people together around an agenda that is widely supported, by the way, and that is prepared to take on very powerful special interests. Now, when we talk about our campaign being us, not me, do you know what I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Anyone want to help me out here? Yes!
I think maybe it means that alone would be like if we work together, we can accomplish better achievements.
This I cannot believe.
I think that maybe like things will be fairer if we work together. Like maybe if we work together, more families and more people can pay their bills. Things that they can achieve, more people can get out of jail, and people can have better lives in America. I'm 10 years old.
Wow. I see a future president from Malcom, Iowa, right here. Thank you, Phil. Right, look, he said it. What can I tell you? It's a little embarrassing to be, told the truth by a 10-year-old, but hey. All right, but here is the point. The point is that it is imperative that we work together, but there's another point that I think very few candidates will tell you. And that is that no candidate for president, not the most honest or well-intentioned. And by the way, there are a number of candidates running for president, Democratic nomination, who are friends of mine, and almost without exception, these are good, honest people. And I will do everything that I can to make sure that this campaign is about a discussion of ideas and not personal attacks. And we all understand that at the end of the day, no matter who wins, I hope it's me. And if it's not, that's the way it is. But we're going to come together to defeat Donald Trump. But the main point is that no president can, in fact, do it alone. Why is that? And the answer is that the power structure of America is such that you have entities like Wall Street, major Wall Street banks. 6 banks have assets equivalent to 54% of the GDP of America. They control the flow of trillions of dollars. They have enormous political power as well as economic power.
Break them up!
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're talking about the insurance companies and the drug companies that make zillions of dollars in profit every single year. They will spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to protect their profits. You're talking about the fossil fuel industry who lie to us every single day about the dangers of climate change. And whether we destroy the planet or not, what is more important to them is their profits. Prison industrial complex, the same thing. So the point that I am making, and that young 10-year-old made as well, is that the only way we can transform this country is when millions of people come together, stand together, and have the courage to take on these incredibly powerful special interests who have unlimited sums of money. Now, at the end of the day, the 1% is very, very powerful, and they have billions of dollars at their disposal. But 1% is 1%. We are the 99%. So they may have the money, but we have the people. And if we do not allow Trump to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion or our gender, our sexual orientation. If we stand together and keep our eyes on the prize about the kind of country we want to create, if we do that, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Malcolm, thanks very much for being here today. Okay, questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, right there. Yes.
Hi.
Yes, just tell us your name, please, and we'll get your mic.
Hi, my name is Naomi. I'm a member of Iowa Student Action and a student over at Grinnell College. I come from a low-income family, and the only reason I'm able to attend that school is because I'm on a full ride scholarship. And most students like me, including here in Iowa, aren't that lucky. Recently here in Iowa, they passed a multi-year tuition model that's going to be
They passed a multi-year?
A multi-year tuition model that's going to be raising tuition at public universities by 5% every single year for the next 5 years. And so I really appreciate the work that you've done to stand against exclusionary models like this and uplift a vision for free college. But I do want to clarify that this vision for free college is working for the people who need it most. So my question is, does your vision for free college include formerly incarcerated and undocumented students? And does it include living stipends so disadvantaged students aren't struggling for food and housing?
Good. The answer is yes. I mean, excellent question. I got to tell you, I am also from a first generation college student. So this is what we're trying to do. We haven't laid out all of the details, but number one, make public colleges and universities tuition free. But I think your point is that may not be good enough. And you know what astounds me? I want to tell you two things that I've learned in the last couple of years. Shouldn't have known it, but I learned that I was in California at a community college. And I met with the president of the college. She said, she was talking, it's a great school. And she said, and we recently opened an emergency food service on campus. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. Oh, many of our kids who are going to college don't have enough food. And they're hungry. Can you believe that? I mean, really, can you imagine? In the United States of America, young people, turn down in Vermont, we have the same thing. Okay. Second point is that many young people in college right now are working outrageous hours. Now, how can you be a good student if you're working 30 or 40 hours a week, cutting into your ability to do your schoolwork? So, to answer your question, we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We certainly are going to provide the stipend. If the goal is to make sure you go to college, we've got to make sure you go to college. All right, so we've got to provide other assistance. We're going to significantly raise Pell Grants as well. Okay, student work programs as well on campus. And we're going to lower student debt. But the goal is, in one way or another, and it'll take maybe a dozen different measures, I want to see every kid who is in the 5th grade, kids here in Malcom, and their parents understand that if those kids do well in school, no matter what the income of that family, that kid will get a higher education and not leave school in deep debt. That is the goal. Thanks very much for that excellent question. Yes, yes, sir. Okay, grab the mic there, sir, right behind you.
I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Iowa, and I've given up practicing in federal court because it's become a ritual. The criminal procedure laws, rules really need to be changed in federal court. And secondly, the federal courthouses have become armed camps. And it seems to me it's emblematic that the government is afraid of its own people. That's just my take.
Okay. Thank you. Well, without answering your question specifically, it is so clear that we have a criminal justice system which is profoundly broken. So young people who are caught with marijuana get a criminal record. But if you are a Wall Street CEO who through illegal activity destroyed the economy, resulting in millions of people losing their jobs, their homes, their life savings, you know what happens to you? You get $1 trillion bailout. That is not the kind of criminal justice system that we need. And our goal is to keep people out of jail. Our goal is to make sure that when people end up in jail, they have the job training and the education they need, so when they return to society, they can stay out of jail and not end up back there. So there's a lot to be done on criminal justice, and that's one of the major areas I hope to tackle. Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
And I think this will be our last question, sir.
I think maybe we've got time for a few more.
Okay.
We're on our way to Las Vegas. I don't want to miss the... We're not gambling. I got a speech already.
My name is Lexi, and I'm an ACLU Rights for All voter. I know you care, like I do, about treating immigrants in our country with dignity. Will you commit to ending the use of detainers and in our immigration system?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the...
Sorry.
I heard the first one.
Will you commit to ending the use of detainers in our immigration system that cause people to be locked up without due process?
Well, I think it goes without saying that in the United States, due process is at the heart of our legal system, isn't it? So yeah, I believe in due process. Okay, question over here, I think. I see a hand. Who's that hand attached? Right here. Okay, one second. Yes. You came to Malcom from Alabama. All right. Okay.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm just wondering what you're going to do about the obstructionist policies of the Senate right now and trying to get your policies passed.
Mitch McConnell sucks.
Well, the first thing that we need is to have a Democratic Senate rather than a Republican Senate. And the second thing we need to do, and I'll give you one example of it right now, and I'm going to ask you to do it. We've made some real progress in raising that minimum wage. The House, last month, the House Committee on Education and Labor reported out a bill that will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It's going to go to the full House pretty soon, I think. Not 100% sure. I think it will pass. If it passes in the House, it comes to the Senate. I urge you, in the strongest possible terms, to tell Senator Grassley and Senator Ernst to please support that legislation. And what we need to do all over this country, you want to make the Congress move? If millions of people stand up and demand that they move, they will move. You can get Grassley and Ernst to support a $15 an hour minimum wage if the people in this state make it very clear by the tens of thousands that folks can't make it on 10 or 11 bucks an hour. Now, also, I think we need filibuster reform. Right now, you have a situation where one person can bring the Senate to a halt, and I am very, very supportive of that as well. There are also mechanisms in the Senate called budget. I don't want to bore you with Senate parliamentary procedures called budget reconciliation bills, where major pieces of legislation have been passed by majority vote, and we will certainly utilize those measures. Okay, gentleman from Alabama. All right. Anybody? Oh my God, all right.
Oh my God.
All right.
All right, so I know you've expressed support for universal basic income in the past in your interviews, but there's this guy, Andrew Yang, who wants to do like $1,000 a month with a VAT tax. I think to win the Democratic primary, you got to do that. You got to give everybody $1,000.
I got a better idea.
Don't do it.
No. Sorry you came all the way from Alabama. Here's the better idea. Okay. Here's the better idea. I understand that idea. I have a better idea. And the better idea, I think, is that in a nation in which there is so much work to be done, just think about it. You got an infrastructure which is crumbling. We could put millions of people to work doing that. Transforming our energy system in terms of weatherizing homes all over this country, building a more efficient energy transportation system. putting more money into wind and solar and other sustainable technologies. We can create millions of jobs doing that. Think about daycare. You want a world-class childcare center? You need well-educated, well-trained, well-paid childcare workers. We need many of them. We need more doctors in rural areas and in urban areas. We need more nurses. We have a dental crisis all over this country. We need to train dentists and get them out there. We need more social workers. You want to reform our criminal justice system? Well, you're going to need people to start working with prisoners. You want kids not dropping out of high school? You're going to need mentors working with them. There is an enormous amount of work to be done. And what we believe in is guaranteeing a job in this country to anybody who is prepared to work. I think that's the better approach. All right, Malcolm, this was great. I mean, this is, I think, it's the 9th town we've been to. This is the smallest town, I believe. It's a great turnout. Thank you all very much for being here this afternoon.